Hi everyone, welcome back to CityROCK. This week I'm going to be talking about some tips and tricks for lead belaying and climbing, some scenarios that you guys might encounter on the wall, and how to be safer both indoors and outdoors. So I've broken lead climbing into a few different segments. The first segment is the pre-climb, and that's everything that happens before you get onto the wall. So one of my top tips is becoming a creature of habit. So you do the same thing every single time the same way so that you cover all your bases, whether you're indoors or outdoors. And one of the best things to start doing is approaching the route, double check the route that everything looks okay, and do that pre-assessment. So assess the route, look for potential areas where it might be a bit cruxy, or you might need to clip from that position, or things like dynos where the belayer would have to give a little bit of extra slack. So that pre-assessment is pretty important. Then going into your rope management situation, flaking your rope out, double checking for any knots that are in the rope or any damage to the sheath. And also, if you're borrowing a rope from someone else, double check that rope and make sure that there are no issues with it. And another thing that is missed a lot by a lot of people is tying a knot in the end of your rope. In my opinion, you should always tie a knot in the end of the rope. It doesn't matter how long that rope is. If you're using a 70-meter rope in the gym, doesn't matter. Tie a knot in the end of the rope. Become a creature of habit. Tie it at least 1 meter away from the end of the rope, not right at the end, 1 meter away, and that basically prevents the knot from rolling off the end of the rope, but also allows you to handle any self-rescue situations if you have to transfer a belay to someone else or add a rope into the system. It just gives you a bit of versatility for the unseen circumstances. And then you would just go into your normal routine for your lead climbing and belaying. So it would be your checks, your tie-ins, harnesses, then go straight into your spotting scenario. Same as the bouldering. If you haven't seen the bouldering spotting video, check that out. Remember, spoons, not forks. And make sure you're protecting that climber's head from hitting the ground or rock before that first clip. Okay, and then on to the start of the climb. Once you've done all your assessments and everything, you're going to start your climbing. Make sure that your belayer is aware that you're starting to climb. Until that first clip is clipped, you as a belayer are useless. You need to be a spotter. So once that first draw is clipped, you can then continue and start belaying. And in the bottom section of the route between draws 1 and 3 is one of the most risky situations you can be in as a climber. So you need to make sure you're clipping between your chin and your hip. The reason for that means there's less rope in the system. If you go into a clip and you're clipping way above your head, the more rope in that system, if you duff that clip and you fall, you're most likely going to hit the ground. There's nothing your belayer can do. So you want to be absolutely sure that for those first 3 draws, you are clipping between your chin and your hip to make sure that there's less rope in the system. I wouldn't encourage clipping above the head, but it's a bit safer once you've passed those first 3 draws. As a belayer, you need to make sure that your short roping is kept to an absolute minimum. If you are in a situation as a climber where you're stuck and you're trying to clip and you're getting short roped, it's not fun. And you could get pumped out and fall with all that slack in your hand. Alright, for the middle section of the route, one of my top tips right here is if you're a lightweight, either eat a big sandwich or go to the front desk and ask to borrow the ohm. The ohm is a device that adds friction into the system so that you're not going to get pulled around crazy if your climber takes a fall. So that middle section of the route, you want to make sure that as a belayer you're not short roping, which I just discussed, and you're making those clips as comfortable as possible for your belayer. If someone gets pumped on the route, you just want to start watching your climber's body language. Watch for those classic signs of the chicken wing, where their forearms start getting pumped and they start holding more into their shoulders. And that's a classic sign that they could potentially take a fall and you will belay with a bit of a tighter belayer. So you want to make sure that the fall is smaller. Or if they are doing the classic Elvis leg, make sure you keep an eye out for that. It's also a sign that they're really pumped and in a situation where they might say take or they might take a fall. And a question that I get asked a lot is when to take and when not to take. The simple thing is take whenever you need to take, but preferably do not take when the climber is above a draw. The climber should probably take a fall then, and you give them a softer catch. So if the climber has clipped a draw and the draw is in front of them or above them, you can take because they're basically on top rope and they can sit and take a rest. Or if the climber is above the draw, preferably don't take because you're just going to pull them off the wall and could potentially pull their foot or ankle onto a hold or onto a ledge or something like that. So you want to rather give them a softer fall and encourage your climber to take a fall there. So higher up on the wall, there comes in that issue where your climber starts to disappear into the atmosphere. The biggest thing here is try not to step back and back and back further away from the wall because you're adding more rope into the system. And if you're a lighter climber, you could get pulled off your feet and potentially let go of the dead end of the rope. In the gym, we have a red line that you should belay inside. And if your neck is starting to get sore, pop into the gear shop, grab a pair of belay glasses, and that sorts that problem out. So always try to stay within that red line to keep less rope into the system. In the case of a big overhang, where your climber might disappear at the top of the route, once they climb past the overhang, instead of stepping out of the red line and trying to see where your climber is, rather ask a friend or a staff member here at the gym to just stand back and tell you when your climber is going to be clipping. That keeps less rope in the system and then mitigating a potentially bigger and more dangerous fall. Once your climber gets to the top of the route, they need to clip the chains. Make sure that you do not take or assume that you must take without your climber letting you know. Always wait until your climber says take, and then you can take by preferably stepping back and taking that slack out of the system instead of bringing your hand above the device where your climber might sit and pull your hand into the device and you could let go of the dead end of the rope. So a simple step back, 1, 2, 3, and then go back into that default position of belaying where both hands are below the device and you're lowering like so. The biggest thing for me as a climber, I hate getting lowered really fast. So like most things in our life, you know, speed isn't everything and it might not be appreciated. So take it nice and slow and in a controlled manner with both hands below the device. In case you get bitten with your top hand, you have a backup hand at the bottom. A good thing to keep an eye out for as a belayer is the climber's rope behind their legs. So when the climber is climbing and they put their foot between the rope and the wall, they could potentially fall off backwards, their leg gets caught and hit the back of their head on the wall. So as a belayer, keep an eye out for that. Just let your climber know, check your leg, and they can bring it around the front of the rope, and you can keep an eye out as you are scanning for potential dangers as the belayer. Those are my top tips. In closing, remember that climbing is an ever-evolving sport. We get new devices, new techniques, new gear to try it every day. So educate yourself, ask people that are really experienced about how they do things, experiment with different types of gear in a safe manner, and find out exactly how things work before you go outdoors and use them, or even indoors. So constantly educate yourself on what you can do to be a better climber and more knowledgeable.